This video is about geometry, and specifically it's about naming angles. So firstly, we're going to talk about identifying types of angles. And the type depends on the size of the angle. So first we have acute angles. And acute angles are angles that are smaller than 90 degrees. The next type of angle is the right angle. And the right angle is equal to 90 degrees. Often you'll see a little symbol in the corner of an angle to confirm that it's a right angle. It might look like this or like this. The next type of angle that we encounter is the obtuse angle. And the obtuse angle is bigger than 90 but smaller than 180. Next we have the straight angle. The straight angle equals 180 degrees. An angle which is less than 180 degrees can be referred to as an ordinary angle. Having passed the straight angle mark of 180 degrees, we now come to the reflex angle. The reflex angle is greater than 180 but less than 360 degrees. And finally, we have our 360 degree angle, which is also known as a full revolution. Just note, only provide these names as answers for a question if you're asked what type of angle is involved. If you're asked to name the angle, that's a little bit different. We'll look at that next. Now we look at naming angles. We saw in our last video how points can exist on a plane and they can be joined up to make lines, line segments and rays. Well, it's also the case that points can be joined up to create angles. Here I've marked 3 points on my plane, the point A, B and C. And I can connect these points to create an angle. I've got a few choices in how I can do this. I'm going to choose to draw this angle. And now I'd like to use notation or symbols to write down a name for this angle. And the name that I'm going to use is going to relate to the points that I passed through when creating the angle. Well, I can see here quite clearly that to draw this angle, I had to join A to B to C. It's almost like connect the dots. So the name for this angle is the angle ABC. You might notice that I could start at C instead and join C to B to A to end up with the same angle. So it would also be possible to name this angle as the angle CBA. Very occasionally in diagrams, you might see the angle named just by the point at the corner, or the vertex point. In this particular case, that would mean that I could name the angle angle B, but you'll see this an awful lot less frequently. You're much more likely to see the 3-letter combination as the name of the angle. And it's this 3-letter combination that we're going to focus on. Here I've marked 3 more points on my plane. And I want to use these points to draw the angle EFD. Just before I do that, just to make quick reference to this little symbol here at the start, it's not a less than symbol, it's just a symbol for angle in this context. Okay, so I want to draw the angle EFD with the points that I have here. Stop for a moment and think to yourself, how should this angle look? A good idea at this point would be to draw these 3 points into your copy and join them up correctly to make the angle EFD. Pause the video here, do that, and then compare your result with mine. Okay, so to make the angle EFD, I must join E to F to D. So I've started by joining E to F, and now I'll continue on to D. And this is the angle EFD. Can you think of any other name that I could give to this angle? I would also be correct to call this angle the angle DFE. Both of these names are acceptable. Here I've marked 3 more points on my plane, the points G, H and J. G, H and J are collinear. So now cast your mind back for a moment to the last video. Can you remember what collinear means? So collinear means that G, H and J are all lined up on the same line. I want to draw the angle GHJ. I want to think about how else I could name it. And I also want to think about how big it is. Okay, first of all, drawing the angle. Again, not a bad idea here to pause the video, sketch this yourself into your copy, and draw the angle in yourself. So I first join G to H, and then I join H to J. What other way could I name this angle? I could also name the angle JHG. And lastly, I'd like to talk about the size of this angle. Because G, H and J are collinear, it means that the angle that they create when I join G to H to J is a 180-degree angle. So I can say the angle GHJ is 180 degrees. That's a very long-winded way of saying it. I want to have a shorter, snappier way of writing it down, again using symbols and notation. You might remember in the last video we had a way of indicating how big a line segment was. We're going to use a similar method to indicate how big an angle is. So I'm looking at the angle GHJ and I want to say what its size is. So to indicate that I'm talking about size, I'm going to draw in a straight line either side of the angle. And in this case, I know that the size is 180 degrees. So this means the size of the angle GHJ is 180 degrees. Just before we move on, note that in the case of this angle, it's possible that the angle might be called the angle F, although you'll see that a lot less frequently than the three-letter combination. And it's possible here that the angle might be referred to as the angle H. But again, the three-letter combination is more common. One final little example. Here we have a number of angles that meet at the point N. I want you to copy this diagram into your copy and write down a suitable name for each of the 5 angles involved. Is there any one of these angles that you can state the size of correctly using notation? Pause the video here, complete this exercise, and then play and check and see if you were correct. Okay, so first of all, naming the angles, I'm going to start here with this angle. This I could name the angle PNQ or alternatively QNP. Either is correct. So this is the angle PNQ. This angle could be called the angle KNQ or the angle QNK. Again, either option there is fine. This angle could be named the angle LNK or KNL. This angle could be named as the angle MNL or the angle LNM. And finally, this angle can be named the angle MNP or the angle PNM. Either is correct. Out of these 5 angles, I can say for definite the size of this angle, and that's because this symbol was marked in to indicate that it was 90 degrees in size. To write that down correctly using notation, I should write down the size of the angle MNP by putting 2 straight lines around the angle MNP equals to 90 degrees. You can see in this example the weakness of using one letter to name an angle, because the angle N is the middle letter in each of these angle setups. And if I was to call them all by this letter, N, it would be very hard to figure out which one I was talking about if I wanted to refer to one individually. So that's a good reason why it's better to use the 3-letter combination rather than just one letter.